Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. If you're just coming in now live, welcome to the group. Everyone in the room, say hi.
Hi.
Hi. Okay, perfect. We're good to go. So tonight's presentation is about how to make £10,000 to £100,000 per property deal using strategic, sophisticated, and educated ways. So basically, no cut corners. The way that I present is to go through a series of steps, step by step, as to how we achieve a successful return when property investing. The first step that I always encourage anyone to do is to know your preferred strategy. And part and parcel of doing that is to be enthusiastic about that particular strategy. Now, when I used to teach people about sales, in terms of enthusiasm, we always used to take that word enthusiasm and look at the last four letters of what enthusiasm made up, which was IASM, which basically stands for I am sold myself. So when it comes to enthusiasm, you have to believe in what you're doing in order to be passionate about it, to get up in the morning and keep doing it every single day. So in terms of the different strategies when it comes to property investing, it can be a little bit of a puzzle. And I've also listed next to the puzzle some of the different investing strategies that are out there in terms of assisted sales. BMV stands for below market value, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard about before. Conversions, so they can be conversions such as commercial conversions, which is currently very popular in the UK. Serviced accommodation, that's now something that's very popular and trending throughout investors throughout the UK. Multi-lets, otherwise known as HMOs, homes of multiple occupancy. Planning gains, title split. So let's say, for example, you've got a bungalow, a title split is whereby you can split it into two and then sell off the other half of the land and get planning permission on it for someone to build another house. That's what we'd call both a title split and a planning gain. And the last one is one that I like quite a lot, is buy, renovate, which means add value and self-profit. Okay? The step two, so once I've decided upon my strategy, what I do next is I learn my strategy inside out. Now, the way that I learned, guess what? Guess how many property courses I went on? None. What I did was I took advantage of the digital world. I got myself on Google, and for the information that I wanted to find out about how to buy, renovate, refinance, add value, all these different things, I found out through going through Google, reading books, and going on YouTube. That's all I did. So for about, and this has been over a series of a number of years, for months and months, even now, I read different books every single month. And even when I'm going on Facebook, I find Facebook a very useful tool for me, especially when you can join a lot of property investor groups on Facebook throughout the UK. And so every day you get up in your newsfeed all these different tips and things that people are doing. Because for me, with property investing, you never stop learning. Like anything in life, you never stop learning. So for me, I'm always hungry to learn more and more about property investing. Is there something someone's doing that I'm not, that I can take advantage of? So if you are in property investing, or if you want to start out in property investing, the first part is education and really learn it inside out. Do not buy a property unless you know every single thing that you are going to do from start to finish, because you can get burned and it will hurt. Okay, so parcel of not making those mistakes, get yourself on Google, get yourself on YouTube, buy books according to the strategy that you're interested in. Part and parcel of all that is also learning the exit strategy for that strategy. So, for example, if I'm buying a 3-bedroom terrace, how do I convert it to a HMO? What health and safety factors do I need to consider? Okay, and read up about it, because trust me, if you get HMOs wrong, I read an article today that apparently someone's gone to prison somewhere in England because they didn't follow regulations correctly when it comes to HMOs. Because you've got to remember, we've got actual people living there, so there's a liability upon your head as a landlord if you get it wrong. So it's very important that you know your exit strategies. Okay, so are you going to keep that property, and if you are going to keep it and rent it out, make sure that you understand every single thing about letting a property and your ongoing obligations. Now, another thing I do, guess what? There are companies in the UK that will teach you about lettings, about tenants, about landlords, what you need to do. And there's a really good website that I always go on, it's called Landlord Zone. And what you can see, it gives you all the up-to-date regulations, such as on right to rent, such as nowadays we have to make sure that anyone we rent a property to, even a room in a HMO, they have to be legally able to reside in England. Otherwise, guess what? You're at fault. Okay? So Always read up on different websites such as Landlord Zone if you are renting properties to find out more. The last part, which is very key to exit strategies, is understanding how a valuer values a property. Now with a HMO, and I'll use that as an example, what valuers look for is they look for, number one, to make sure it's surrounded by other HMOs. Number two, which is very important, to make sure you've actually modified it to that of a HMO. You can't just put a wall up and say, oh, here's a HMO. It doesn't work like that. You've actually got to modify it in terms of the fire doors, the seals, the door closers. You've got to have the wired in fire alarms, things like that, all the way across. These are the things, and a valuer will look for that as well, because the more you do to make that a conventional HMO up to code, the higher valuation you will get. Okay, so we're looking to be surrounded by other HMOs. We're looking to make sure that, my brain is about to go, we're looking to make sure that obviously we've got everything that's required in terms of the modifications. Also, in terms of having a licence, now in Norwich City, I only deal with Norwich City from NR1 to NR7 postcodes, but the council, Norwich City Council, say for you to have a HMO licence, it has to be 3 stories of property and have 5 households. It's not either or. Okay, so not every single HMO in Norwich needs to have a licence, and it's not like one of these things like VAT where you can voluntarily apply for VAT. It has to have that in order for you to get a licence. You can't just go, oh, I want a licence. You have to have 3 stories and 5 households. But that's just Norwich City Council. Every single council throughout the UK has their own different licence requirements. So, you know, if you're streaming in now, or anyone inside this room here, what I do on a regular basis is speak to the councils. I always speak to them every single week, whether that's planning, conservation, or in HMOs. I speak to them regularly to ask them, what do I need to do to make you happy? So that's another tip that I would recommend that everyone does when it comes to investing in property. Step 3 is to learn the hurdles. Now, what I see a lot of in property investing is you think, okay, right, I want to go and do a HMO. I understand how neat the floor plan needs to be. I understand about the health and safety aspects of it. But suddenly what you didn't take into account was that you bought the property in the wrong area where there's no demand for a HMO. So you're stuck. So then you're reliant upon the valuation, what we call bricks and mortar valuation, which is a comparable valuation rather than a commercial valuation if you get the HMO right, which is based on the income method like a business. So in terms of the hurdles, and I recommend you write these down, these are the things that property investors throughout the UK or even throughout the world, this is what we look at. We look at the political aspect, what's currently going on with the recent budget review, what impact will it have to the economy. When I look at every budget review, I'm not like most people. Most people will start crying their cornflakes or whinging about what the Chancellor's done now. What I do is I read it to see what opportunity I can find. And that's just me as a person. So for me, when a budget review comes out, read it and try and spot the opportunity, okay? Because let everyone else be the doom mongers, let us be the opportunity finders. Obviously, general elections play a key, because if there's a general election coming up, we know the Conservatives are going to be nice as pie and giving us wonderful benefits to try and keep them in for the next term. So again, you always look at the political stance of the country. In terms of economical aspects, the councils in Norwich, we have what we call a joint core strategy between all 3 councils, which is the Norwich City Council, Broadland and South Norfolk, and they call it the joint core strategy. They issued a local housing market assessment, and you can get it, again, guess by how? Google, it will bring it up. It will tell you about the housing shortage, what they're short on and what we need to supply. So again, if you're a property investor or a home builder, all you need to do is study that and give the councils what they need. Easily done. Okay, so that's how you can cover the economical part of it. Again, we look at local commerce. You know, if there's no businesses in a place, there's not likely to be people. And if there's no people, there's a problem, because people with jobs tend to buy or rent homes. So we always need to make sure that when we're buying properties, it's in a location where there's going to be people. Okay. Interest rates are very important, because obviously the more expensive it is to borrow money, the less people that borrow it. So the cheaper the interest rates are, the more people are borrowing money. The more people that are borrowing money, the more demand there is for housing. Okay, so again, this is another stance that we look at. In terms of social, this is in terms of targeting a specific demographic. Now, when we look at different strategies, sometimes on buy, renovate and sell, you're targeting a certain type of market. Some people throughout the UK will target the over 55s, whereby we model it to quite a high standard where they're not going to want to change anything. Because for the over 55s, they're really tired of, they've done their houses up throughout their lifetime. Now they want to move into a house where they haven't got to do anything. So when you refurbish a house to a very high modern standard, it looks brand spanking new, you really hit that over 55 market. So that comes down to what we call targeting the right demographic and giving them their preference. In terms of legal, it's very important, and a lot of people make these mistakes, is buying properties in the wrong area. Does anyone know what an Article 4 zone is? I know Lisa does, I know my dad does, and Tom does, right? Lisa, do you want to tell them what it is?
It's restrictions on planning what you can and can't do.
So, an Article 4 area is a restriction on planning what you can or can't do. So guess what? Someone's bought a house to do it up. Uh-oh, you can't do it up. You're now stuck with that property, you've got to try and sell it. So that property you went to an auction for, and you thought, hang on a minute, this is a really low price, I've got a steal here, is actually not a steal. It's located in an Article 4 zone. Other areas to consider is what we call a landlord licence zone. So again, guess how you can find out whether the properties, when you do your due diligence, what areas they are in. Guess who you got called? The council. As easy as that. Go to whichever council it is, whether it's Norwich City Council, Broadland, South Norfolk, call them up and ask them, what area is this property located in? Is it a conservation zone? Okay. Is it an Article 4? Is it a landlord licence zone? Also, is it a listed building or a community asset? Because if it's a listed building, it means you can't do any alterations to the interior. Forget about the front, because that's a whole new different thing. But to the interior, you cannot change without their permission. And to get their permission is about 5-6 months, realistically. A lot of people will tell you 2 months, but they're not being very realistic. It's about 6 months, and there's no guarantee you're going to get a yes. And if you haven't got a yes, guess what you're relying upon then? Your exit to be the bricks and mortar value, okay? Which is not so strong when you know that you've got a legal restriction against the property. Other things we look at as well is the environment. Don't buy a property next door to a power plant, for obvious reasons. Yeah, you might want to buy a property close to a school. Guess why? Because there's going to be parents that have kids that go there, so it's going to be convenient for them, because all human beings love convenience, okay, for them to buy that house that's near that school. And we'll go into the location factors in a little while. And again, other parts of the environment, health and safety requirements, which again you can find a lot of that information out through the councils and speaking to local fire officers and people like that. My next step in terms of achieving £10,000 to £100,000 per property deal is to, once I know my strategy, once I know my hurdles, the next step is to learn your market. Now guess what I did around Norwich? I drove it all. I got this beautiful map from the Ordnance Survey map from out of from a shop around the corner. I can't, it's Waterstones I think it's called, isn't it? So I got the map and I literally just drove around the whole of Norwich, postcode to postcode, NR1, NR2, NR3, NR4, NR5, NR6, NR7. Right? Because what I wanted to see was the demographic, sorry not demographic, I wanted to see where the terraced houses were. I wanted to see where the ex-local authority houses were. Now there's a real good tip for finding ex-local authority houses. Where's Lidl's? Right? Where's Aldi's? These are the places that they set up shop around the people that don't tend to be very good with money, right? So they are the people that we tend to target to get what we call below market value, right? Because they're obviously not very good with money. What you'll see is you've got all these beautiful council houses. Obviously you've got your Sky Dish outside, but then you're going to see that the brand new spanking car, which is on hire purchase, which will go going back in 6 months' time. So these are the people that a lot of investors will target without estate agents to get them below market value deals. Okay. In terms of learning your market, your area, property types. You can go on a website. I put M price. It stands for mouse price. If you go on mouse price, it's a brilliant website, and you stick in the area like NR1. It will give you a heat map and tell you what property types are there. So where are the terraced homes? Where are the semi-detaches? Where are the bungalows? Okay. So again, in terms of doing your research, go on mouse price, because that's what I did. In terms of sold price, it's very important. Don't go on Rightmove and look what's for sale. There's a reason it's for sale, is because no one's bought it. right? A property is only worth as much as someone's willing to pay for it. So we look at the sold prices, because that's really what its true value is. I use a website called Calnear to give me information in terms of sold prices, and it will tell you right down to the postcode that property, how much it's sold for. You can do exactly the same on Rightmove. And lastly, another good website is home.co.uk. That's even better, because that will give you the rental room rates, not just how much it costs to rent a 1-bed or a 2-bed apartment, but the actual room rate in each postcode, which is what I used when I looked to buy a HMO. How much can I rent the room for? I don't listen to the estate agent down the road that's telling me the dream, telling me I can rent a room for 1,000 when it's only 500. I do my own research. So I use home.co.uk, as well as a website called Spare Room. Spare Room is a really good website to use because it's got these two functions on the home page. It says rooms wanted versus rooms for let. So if you go on and you type in NR1 on Spare Room where it says rooms wanted, you can see how many people are looking for rooms currently in NR1, right? Then you click on rooms for let NR1. So let's say you've got 20 people looking for a room in NR1, but the only rooms for let that is available is 10. What have you got? You've got demand outweighing supply. So if you've now found a property in NR1 that you want to convert into a HMO and target the room-let market, you know that there is a demand there now. And there's two websites you can do that on. You've got Spare Room and also Easy Roommate. In terms of, again, we've just covered the rented prices as well. Study postcodes. Like I said, I literally just drove around, and as I was driving around, I felt a little bit like a police officer, like I was looking for some kind of crime that was going on. I'm just literally looking for tired little houses. And what I do is I have on my phone this little Dropbox, access to Dropbox with an Excel spreadsheet. So when I see a property that looks a little tired, I write down the address. So rather than write it down on a bit of pen and paper, I write it straight into Excel and save it. So when I get back to my office, it's already there. So I don't have to repeat myself when I get back. And so what I've got now is literally about 150 properties in Norwich. On my spreadsheet, I get a letter every single month that I'll pay cash for their house when they want to sell it. Okay, so I'm literally hounding them until they write back to me and tell me to go away. Right, and that's how a lot of investors will find properties away from the market without estate agents. Because the problem with estate agents, as much as I love them and they give us 95% of the listings throughout the UK, the problem is that they offer that house out to so many different buyers. And in today's world, we have a program called Homes Under the Hammer. And that what that's done is, nowadays you get people that want to be investors because they've seen that program and think it's easy, and suddenly they are bidding on houses where the profit margin is only 5%. So then people like myself, I'm not going to go up to that sort of margin because it doesn't interest me, and I can end up being out of profit and in the red. So what we do now is we tend to do it off market and find our own properties, which is part of momentum investing, which I'll talk about later. Going back to in terms of learning your market, again, when you study the postcodes, you drive around them, you then start to see within each postcode the demographic. Now in NR5 is where the University of East, well, close to the University of East Anglia, which is obviously NR4, but borderline on NR5, just north of Erland Road, is where all the students tend to be. So if I find a property that's in NR5, what am I likely to do? I'm likely to convert it into a HMO, because when you convert it to a HMO, you are then able to get the income method on the valuation, which means you can sell it more than on the comparable method for bricks and mortar. So again, drive around the postcodes, and it doesn't have to be in Norwich, you can do this anywhere over the UK, you just got to know your area, and literally look to see what is the demographic of the type of clientele that lives in each and every postcode, so you know who to target. Okay? And again, as you can see, I use Ordnance Survey, but I also use ProMap. The reason I use ProMap is because they can actually customise the maps down to the exact road or area that you want. Problem with the OS map is you get a massive map of Norwich, it doesn't help. And for someone like me that targets my postcodes down to NR1 through to NR7, I need it custom made, and that's why I use ProMap to do that for me. So that takes us past step 4, which is to learn your market in your area. In terms of moving on to step 5, the next bit, which is the most fun part of all of, so you've done all your research, you've spent your time in your classroom at home, you've read loads of books, you're like, right, I'm now ready to go and to find these properties. How do we find these properties? Well, these are the different ways that I find the properties. So once I know my target prices, that I know is what considers below market value, I set up email alerts on things like Rightmove and Zoopla, so that when a property comes on for that price in that area, I get an email alert. So rather than me spend every morning on Rightmove, on Zoopla, wasting time, because time is money, I let modern technology and email alerts come into my inbox. So because I know how much a property needs to be that I will buy it for on a HMO in order for me to get a strong exit on it, I will only get an alert when a property comes on the market within that price. So that's how number one way of finding properties. Number two is estate agents. Estate agents get 95% of all the listings throughout the UK, so you've got to use them. So in terms of using estate agents, and this is something I've noticed throughout the UK, they never call you back. They never. Okay, at all. So guess what? You've got to call them every single week. You've literally got to have your estate agents and all the different estate agencies and speak to them every single week, okay, to remind them that you're still there, because trust me, they will forget you. No matter what you do or how many properties you buy, they're going to forget you. But because what your aim is by being in contact with them every single week, is when the properties come in, before they even hit the window, you want to be the first person they call, which is what they call the banker. So that's why we speak to estate agents every single week to get the best deals before anyone else gets a chance. Direct to vendor. We like direct to vendor because when it's not on the market, you don't end up getting in a situation which is what we call best bids, best and final bids. Because when it comes to best and final bids, you might end up being against someone who doesn't really understand what they're doing, getting a bit emotional when it comes to the purchase and bidding too high that you can't compete with. You don't really have that when it comes to direct to vendor, when you treat the vendor correctly. Now, something that I always do is that I don't do deals with old people, so to speak, because I know if I buy a property below market value, guess who's coming after me? Their kids. So another thing that I do as well is I have a value to always put people in a better position than what they were before. That's something that's very important to me. So if someone does call me from one of my letters and says to me, look, we're about to be repossessed, we need to sell our house, what I will do is make sure that I give them fair market value based on the condition of their property. I'm not here to try and cheat people. That's not what I do, okay? And that's not what any property investor should do. So when you deal with direct to vendor, one thing you should always do is make sure that you put people in a better position than what they were before. Again, auctions. I love auctions, but you know the biggest problem? Homes under the hammer. People go there, they watch the programme, and literally you see it. Now, if I'm selling a property, I'm going to stick it on the auction, because you end up getting more than what you would do by putting it on the market with an estate agent. Because literally you go there, and you can go to the one at Dunstan Hall, the East Anglia one, and you just sit there, and I've got my ceiling prices. I won't go over my ceiling. I'm focused. To me, this is a business. There's no emotion involved. It's just numbers. So I go there. I've done all my research. I've checked the legal packs, everything. I've viewed them, and I'm very happy to go and bid, but I've got my ceiling. So I go there, and literally, there is people bidding like 25,000, 30,000 high. So what I always do is, if I get a chance, I wait at the back. So when they leave, I ask them, I say, oh, excuse me, why did you bid that for? And he goes, oh, I can make 5-10 grand profit. Oh, okay. So you want to work for 6 months for £5,000-10,000 with all that risk? So this is what we tend to find if you go to auctions to compete. So how do we get around it? Pre-auction. Whenever what happens is, usually a month before the auction, you'll get a list of all the lots. There are some that come close to the auction day, but usually you get the whole list of the lots before the auction. What have you got to do? You call the auction house, you say, can I buy that one pre-auction? I'll give you a strong offer right now. And sometimes it does happen, because some vendors are so desperate, they'll take an offer pre-auction, okay? You might be lucky, you might go to the auction and get a deal for the ceiling price that you said, okay? Or you might not. So I don't usually tend to go to the auctions. What do? I call up afterwards to see what's still left. Because imagine you're the vendor that's trying to sell that property. To the auction house, you have to pay an upfront fee. So not only are you losing money because you can't sell your house, you've paid money up front to the auction house, so you're feeling a lot of pain in your pocket right now. So what's happened is, unfortunately, no one bought your house at auction, so you're really frustrated, right? So now you're open for suggestion post-auction. So you can actually pick up some really great deals post-auction. So they're the 3 steps that I apply when it comes to auction property. And again, you can see in brackets, always check the legal pack. I've been surprised where I've read online some horror stories, some property investors that have bought auction properties without seeing them. Huh? Like every time I go look at a property, listen, I'm not a builder. Well, I don't claim to know how to build a roof or about the insulation of a property. That's not my forte. So guess who I take with me every time I go look at a property? A builder, right? Because he will spot things that I won't see. So he will suddenly look up to the roof and they go, oh, there's a problem there. I ain't going to see that, but he does. And the fact that I've taken that builder with me saves me from making a bad mistake of buying that property, and next thing you know, you've got to replace the roof. And guess what happens to the profit when you've got to replace the roof? It's gone, and you've got a big red problem. So once you've found the property, the next part, which is the most crucial part, is what we call due diligence. Now, in terms of the assessment, STAR stands for schools, transportation links, amenities, and revenue. So in terms of the revenue, what are the local businesses that are nearby, for what I mentioned earlier on? Obviously schools for obvious reasons, transportation links. Again, the more transportation links around the property, the more people that you're going to be able to target to live there. So if there's a bus stop, if there's a train station, you know, if there's taxis or there's car park spaces, there's no restrictions on the road, then you're going to have a lot more demand to sell that property to. Amenities. So again, it's about quality of life. As human beings, we all like convenience and we all like quality of life. We all like the nice things in life. So again, the more amenities that are as close to the property as possible, the more desirable it is going to be to more buyers. And again, when it comes to assessment, you've got to look at all the costs. Don't just look at the refurb costs. There's a lot more to buying a property than a refurb cost. You've got to look at, if you're using a bridging loan, what are the interest fees? You've got to look at legal fees. You've got to look at the insurance fees, haven't you, Tom? Right? You've got to consider them things as well. Okay? There's so much to it, a lot more than what I just mentioned, that you've really got to be as harsh as possible. It's so easy, trust me, I've done it myself. You see this deal, and literally you sit at your desk and you go, woohoo! You get so excited, like it's me. I punch the air like this and get really excited, but then I remember I crunch the numbers. Because the last thing I want to do is let my excitement take over me and forget the fundamentals of what I'm doing. So, other things that I then tend to do is the due diligence. As you can see, I look at the delicatessen because to me it suggests disposable income. And when people have got disposable income, they can afford to buy your house for higher market value. What I mentioned earlier, one in terms of Lidl's and Aldi's, obviously if you're buying a house around them areas, it suggests there's lower income earners there. In terms of presence of estate agent offices, this is crucial. Estate agents will only open branches in areas that are growing. So area growth is a great thing for you to invest in property in. Celebrity haunts, that will always add to the alert of an area. You know, if David Beckham was living next door, half of us would be living there tomorrow. Right? So again, you look to see if there are any local celebrity haunts nearby. Neighbour demographics, very important when you look at that property. What's the unemployment rate in the area? Okay? That's another thing to factor in. And again, age demographics in terms of the surroundings. Young people tend to like to be near where? Prince of Wales Road. Why? Because you've got the bars, your clubs, you've got the gyms, you've got everything that's suitable to them. So again, for each property that you look at, and it's not just indoors, it's throughout the UK, you look at what are the surroundings to that property and what is the demographic of the age of the target buyer that you're selling to. Because guess what? You've then got to refurb the property according to what that age demographic wants. As easy as 1, 2, 3. Step 6, we're still continuing on due diligence. Crime rates, very important. Who wants to live on a road whereby you get your car broken into every single night? It's a bit of a tough sell, even from an estate agent. Restrictions, again, we talked about restrictions earlier on. And again, in terms of due diligence, when it comes to looking at your exit strategies, crunch the numbers 3 times. The amount of time I've got on my calculator, and suddenly I thought I made more profit than I haven't. When I've got to the 3rd time, then I realise, oh, I forgot about that, or I forgot about this. So again, crunch the numbers 3 times, and again, comps stands for comparables. Look at what recently sold of a similar type. And you can do that on Rightmove. If you go to Rightmove website on the sold prices, it allows you to filter it by the property type, so terrace, detached, bungalow, things like that. And again, you can really start to see, and it will give you like the history for the last 10 years or so. Obviously, you don't want to rely on the last 10 years. You want to look at what's been going on in the last 6 to 12 months maximum to see what the selling prices are. Advice. Again, as I said earlier on, I'm not one of these people that claims to know everything about everything. The reason I've succeeded in property investing is because I surround myself with people that are experts in their fields. So when it comes to finding a property investment and making money and how to refurb it and how to sell it, that's my forte. When it comes to building regs, I'm not a building regulator, so I ask the building regulator. When it comes to insurance, I find out from an insurance broker what insurance do I need for this, because there might be an insurance policy that I need to have that I don't know about, because guess what? I'm not in insurance. Obviously builders for obvious reasons, finance brokers, you know, sometimes what we see, and I see a lot of it, lenders will promise you that they'll lend on something, but then suddenly they'll go, actually, that's in Wyndham, that's not in Norwich, so I'm not going to lend on it. But it happens all the time. So again, you need to make sure you're speaking to finance brokers and explaining to them exactly what the property is, because the last thing you want is to exchange and then suddenly they pull out at the 11th hour when you've got to complete, because you lose your money on the deposit. Step 6, this is some of the due diligence. This is my financial analysis that I use when I look at every single deal. So it starts to tell me down here what my return on the investment is based on all my total buying costs and my selling costs, how much it will cost me to sell the property. So again, I use this Excel spreadsheet on every single property investment that I look at even before I consider making an offer. Another thing that I do is I put together a very detailed due diligence report. So again, all the information that I look for, such as the sold comparables, target market, I put it all down in a nice beautiful brochure and then I study it. So I know I've got all that information there and I'll send it out to various other people as well. Moving on to step 7. So we've found the property, we've done our due diligence, and we think, wow, this is great. The numbers make sense. You found your first property, so you're really excited. Now what comes to it, you got to secure it, you got to win the deal. Now, these are the different ways that you can secure property, and they are very, very, very creative, and not many people know of all these different techniques. Number 1, you'll hear a lot about people talk about options agreements. They're not strong enough. They are not strong enough because someone can pull out of an option and there's nothing you can do. It has to be what we call a lockout agreement with a cancellation clause. So, and this is something I will do, and that's both on and off the market. So on the market is with estate agents, and off the market is with direct to vendor. So when it comes to on the market, estate agents, and I've got a deal, guess what? I'm not reliant upon that sales memo helping me out before we get to exchange. No, I expect them to sign a lockout agreement with a cancellation clause for £100,000. So if they pull out for 100, they've got to pay me £100,000 before the exchange. It's never going to happen, but it's enough to put them off from any silly bugger game to stop what we call in the UK gazumping. So, and I do that with both estate agents and direct to vendor. Another way, once you've signed that lockout agreement, something I always do is I register it against the land registry using what we call an AN1 form, which stands for Agreed Notice. It costs about £40. You can download the form, or you've got to type on it Google again, AN1 form. You find it, you download it, it tells you what to do, you fill it out, send the agreement that's signed, because they need to see a copy of it, because guess what, it's going to appear on the search results if anyone tries to buy the property behind your back, and suddenly they know that that agreement is in place. So again, that's what I do to secure myself as well when it comes to purchasing property. Another strategy we use, so let's say for example a lockout agreement wasn't an option. What I sometimes do is I'll exchange after we've done our searches, of course, and our solicitors are happy with that, all the inquiries have been satisfied. We will then exchange, literally pay 5-10% deposit, and sometimes, depending on the vendor's situation, you can get what we call a delayed completion. So you don't have to complete for 2 months, 6 months. It really depends on the negotiation between you and the vendor. So another technique that people will use is exchange with delayed completion. Another option, which a lot of people use, I don't personally use this myself because that's not what my goals are for, but a lot of people use lease options. So for example, if someone's got property, they'll say, look, I'll lease it from you for 15 years, and you sign a lease option agreement for 15 years, and then basically what they'll do is they'll either sell that lease option to another investor, or they'll basically rent the property out for a hire, do it up, rent the property out for a higher price, which some people call rent to rent, which is not something that I actively focus on because it's not part of my goals in investing. The last one, which is a really good one, which not a lot of people do this, which they really should, it's called assisted sale. Now let's say, for example, we found someone who wanted to sell their house and its end market value is 150, right? But you made them an offer of, let's say 100. They didn't accept it. But you know, if you put, all it needs is £5,000 worth of work. So what you can say, look, you don't accept 100, how about I'll give you 105 and I'll pay for all the refurb costs to refurb the property and I'll sell it for you. You don't have to worry, I'll cover all the fees with the estate, with the lawyer and the estate agents, but you get 105 and I'll take the risk in refurbishing the property and blah, 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 and I'll sell it. And they say yes. So when they do that, not all the time obviously, but fictitiously when we're talking now, so they will sign what we call an assisted sale agreement. So again, what happens is you sign the assisted sale agreement, again you register it on the land registry to protect yourself, okay? And you then basically make them move out because it's part of the agreement. You whitewash the windows so no one can see in what you're doing, and you decorate the property, you spend the 5,000, you then give it to an estate agent, they sell it, you then get the profit on the difference. So basically, that's what we call leveraging finance, because you haven't actually paid 105. You'll only pay the 105 when you sell it for 150 after you've put 5,000 in to do it up. You understand? So, for example, you've agreed 105 once you sell the property, but we aren't going to be able to sell the property in its current use. So let me take the risk. I'll do the property up at my own cost. I'll pay the legal fees, I'll pay the estate agent's fees and the surveyor fees and whatnot, and I'll sell it for you. So then it means, obviously, if you've 105, you're in for 5 is 110. Let's say after all fees you're at 115. So you've got 35,000 based on an investment of 5,000. The ROI on that is pretty impressive, in something that will take you 3 to 4 months from start to finish. So that's what a lot of property investors do, which is what we call assisted sale agreements, when people won't accept below market value offers. A huge tip, sometimes when I go to an auction, I might buy a property, but I don't actually want it. But I know that it's that good a deal, I can sell it to someone else. And the only way that I can do that is by making sure in every single one of these contracts, it has an assignable contract clause. So basically, I can assign the contract to somebody else. So let's say, for example, I bought property for 105,000 at auction that I know after you put a good little bit of refurb in, you could sell it for 160. But I ain't really got the time to do it. So I go to auction, I pay the 10%, and obviously as I go to sign the contract, I make sure I write on it it's assignable. That's what I do, because at an auction you have to pay the 10% on a day. You have to sign the exchange contract. That's the terms of auctions throughout the UK. So when you do that, you write it's assignable on the contract, and then literally property investors that I network with in the local area, I'll call them up. I say, listen, I just found this deal. You can make this, this, and this. I've got other projects. If you give me £5,000 on top, I'll assign it to you. So literally, from going to there to pick up the property that I didn't even want, I could actually make £5,000 to £10,000 in a morning, just by being a little bit creative, because in every single one of these agreements, I have an assignable contract clause. All right, and on top of that, something I mentioned earlier on, always have the cancellation penalty clause in every single contract, because you need to protect yourself. It's moving on from step 7, we now move to step 8. So we've looked at the deal, we've secured it now, we're very happy. What are our exit options? So there's 3 options. You can sell the deal, hence the assignable clause. You can do a joint venture with someone, and again, by having the assignable clause means that you can assign the contract into the limited liability partnership that you set up as part of the joint venture. Now the reason we set up legal liability partnerships is because it's the most tax efficient way in the UK to pay as little tax as possible on property profits. Okay, but that's a whole other subject for another time. Or you can fly hand solo, you can do it yourself. We're now coming to the end of what I want to talk about. All the other stuff in terms of sales progression, refurbishment, project management, interior design, furnishing, health and safety, insurances and selling and renting, they are whole another chapters, and we haven't got time to talk about that because you'll all be asleep and I'll be here till Monday. So that's something we'll talk about at a different time. You can contact me, you've all got my card, and we can talk about that over the phone or over email or whatnot. But moving on to the 3 possible options, I wanted to share with you a case study on what you could do based on those 3 options. So let's say it's a 3-bed terrace, and after looking at the deal, your strategy is to convert it into a 5-bed HMO because you know it's located in an area where there is a demand to rent rooms. So you've done your research, you've done your due diligence, you've called the council, and you are happy there are no restrictions. Okay? Next, you know, if you were to sell, exit option here, it talks about sellers B&M. B&M stands for bricks and mortar. Okay, so that's a property that we call on a valuation method known as the comparable method. But a lot of people, you might hear them talk about it, call it bricks and mortar value. And so that's basically, I've got this 3-bed terrace, but how much did the 3-bed terrace down the road sell for? So that's comparable because it's the same type. So we look at the 2 exit options. So if I just sold that property based on bricks and mortar, what could I sell it for? Or if I convert it into a HMO, it effectively becomes a business. And when it becomes a business, is what we call the commercial valuation, which is based on the income method. So then you can really shoot up the valuation of the property. So for example, if you bought a property for 149, one option is you could sell it for bricks and mortar at 205. Or you could convert it into a HMO, make it produce a yield of 10% per annum, because there are so many buyers throughout the UK that are looking for 10% yield properties, because they're few and far between nowadays. Most yields people settle for at the moment are 4 or 5%. So if you can bring something to the market that is giving 10% for a high quality property, you will sell it within days. So looking at this case study, so we've bought the property now for 149. We're now going to convert it. So we know our end valuation is 240. The total buying costs, so we used a bridging loan, but the total buying costs with all the other fees, the refurbishment, the insurance, everything else, was £66,429. Our selling cost to sell it, so you've got your estate agency fees and your conveyancing to the solicitors when you sell the property, is £3,210. So that would make the net profit based on selling it for 240, 75,291 and 50 pence. Now, going back to our 3 options, we can either sell the deal, we can either do a joint venture, or we can fly hand solo. So if we sold the deal, look at it like this. At the moment, you know your total buying cost is 66,429, giving a return of 75,291. So if I sold it to you for 10,000, what you would do on your buying cost is add 10,000 to that, which becomes 76,429. So if I can say to you, look, give me 10,000, you've paid me 10,000, you've got to pay a further 66,429, and you'll get back 75,291 on top, as well as your money back. Are you going to bite my hand for it? Of course, if you got the money, you would do, right? So that's what we call selling the deal, and some people call that deal packaging throughout the UK, or sourcing property and selling the deal that way. Or we could do a joint venture. I could say to the person, listen, I'll manage the refurbishment, the sales progression, I'll sell the property, I'll do everything, but you'd be what we call the silent equity partner. So you put in the 66,429, we split the profit 50%, so basically you get back your money plus 37,645.75, which represents a return on investment of 54% in 4 months. Again, it's very attractive, because when people do joint ventures, and you see this a lot in the UK, people that are new to property will joint venture with experienced property investors, because it's almost like handheld investing, because they'll see what you do, how you do it, without worrying about taking the risk and making a mistake themselves. So they're happy to go, okay, yeah, I'll do this with you. It's a joint venture. We're both legally protected because we both own the title. Okay, you do all the work. I take 50% of the profit. Job done, and it brings returns to 54% in turnaround time, such as 4 months on this sort of case study. Or you could fly hand solo. So you put in the 66,429 yourself. You obviously do everything then from start to finish. So you progress the sale to get it to exchange complete. You do obviously the refurbishment. You then obviously put it on the market, sell it, blah, 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 all these things. Obviously, if you do that, you can see your return on investment is a lot greater. But obviously, as we've all probably heard this saying before, when it comes to investing, the bigger the risk, you know, blah 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 from there. So these are the three options when it comes to with property exits, and this is something that will then lead us to say, how do you make 10,000 to 100,000 per property deal? It is right here. You can either sell the deal to make 10, you can either do a joint venture to make 37 or 40, or you can do it yourself and make 75,000 based on this case study. Any questions? I made it. Then thanks for coming live, we can go off there now. Any questions?